All right, everybody. So it is 7:03 and we'll call this board meeting to order. I want to thank everybody for coming. I know there are several people have looked online at all the documents that we have shared. And we are looking for public comment first. I do ask that we keep it to 3 minutes just because we have a very long agenda. This meeting is supposed to be mainly for the budget, but because of the urgent need to discuss the structure, we wanted to include that as well. And likewise, I ask for everybody to remain respectful and cordial to each other. And lastly, in getting feedback, we are looking not necessarily for comments about individuals. We are really looking for comments regarding the actual structure, which is the way we are proceeding with this and the way to be completely open and honest about what comes next. So with that, is there anyone who would like to, I open it up for public comment. Figure out how to, you're recording. Yeah, I'm recording. Yeah.
Yola.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, can everybody see me okay? I'm a little in the dark here at home, but just in terms of the restructuring piece, I'm just curious. I see on the board meeting agendas that there's a lot of discussion about it. I'm curious about what is the next action plan and when honestly we'll see that as an action item on the agenda. Is that tonight?
We were planning to respond. We're planning to do the action item on the 25th. We're here listening for public comment today and on the 25th as well.
Okay, thank you.
But we haven't had an opportunity to hear the public yet. So that's why we wanted to get comments.
Recording in progress.
Anyone else?
This is Tom Harkins, Spanish teacher. I would like to make a public comment if I may.
Absolutely.
So hello, and thank you for allowing me time to speak. I'd like to address the notes from the board discussion about the admin structure during the board retreat. First of all, I'm concerned that the interim structure is still one of the options that's being considered. Some of the cons that are listed under that option are that the school needs more stability, that it could increase stress, and that interim leadership may not be as committed to the district long-term towards fixing things. And I wholeheartedly agree with each of those comments. The people that work at our school are stressed and don't need any additional stress. We need an administration that's committed to Lyme for the long term, and we need stability. So I ask that the board move forward with hiring full-time administrators. Secondly, I'd like to express my appreciation for the academic director position and what it's brought to the Lyme School during that position while it has been here. Excuse me. The notes from the retreat did not present that position in a favorable light, and I do not agree with that representation. The academic director has moved the academic curriculum forward quite a bit and has helped teachers in a wide variety of ways. I have more to say, but I will respect, Yolanda, your request to not discuss individuals. So that is where I'll stop there. I'm going to put that was my Spanish teacher hat. I'm going to put my co-president of the LEA hat on later for the LEA comment, if I could do that as well, please.
Thank you, Tom. Just to be clear, all of the comments that the document is reflective of, we were asked to bring everything to the table. And so kind of everything was introduced and put on the table. And that's what we were tasked and asked to do. So it wasn't that we were preferring one thing over another, just kind of trying to go through everything. Sarah Shipton, can you unmute first?
Hello, everyone. In talking about the models that you have presented, I count 5. The one that I don't see is the possibility of a part-time superintendent, a full-time principal, and an academic director. I'm wondering if that's being considered and how much it would cost.
So I think, sorry. Yeah, I think, yeah, so generally, we're not supposed to be answering. I think that in regards to that chart, just to specify, in the chart where it says the academic director, district administrator, that was the one where we were, actually, we didn't really have that option as all three. So you are correct. I apologize. And to the cost, I don't think we can speak to that right now.
If you stick around.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for the budget part.
Hi, Yolanda. Could I make a statement as well?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. I also wanted to address the notes from the board retreat, in particular the con listed in the current structure about the academic director. In the last few years, our academic director has led many initiatives in the middle school and the lower school. She's consistently, the academic director is consistently organized and led best practices learning in writing, math, and reading, along with other initiatives. And not only leading those projects, but making teachers accountable for our learning, also participating in the classes and the workshops and the committee meetings, so feeling like a peer in learning. And this position has significantly impacted the teachers' continued learning and future planning in the Lyme School. Our academic director manages the curriculum work and expectations and is now taking on the interim principal role. So every day dealing with short-term decisions and issues of the day, but keeping that long-term goals and visions in mind with her curriculum. So I support the position. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey,
Jim,
say some-
North.
Yes, thank you. Full disclosure, I am currently hired by the school board to do some faculty observation and also to provide a sounding board for the interim principal. And I also come to this question with 10 years of experience as a principal, 3 years at Lebanon High School and 7 down the road at Richmond Middle School. I have a clarifying question, and I'm hoping that whether the public gets to see this or not, all the thoughts that were collected at the board retreat, they're not designated to a particular group. So I think it would be important to know, what does the faculty say? What does the staff say? What do the building administrators say about this? What does the interim superintendent say? What does the LEA say? And it sounds like you may hear some of that tonight, but I found it slightly difficult to give weight. It's sort of like reading an opinion in a newspaper with nobody signing it. So I'm hoping the board knows where those comments all came from. My final comment is I did serve on a steering committee for the strategic plan, the one that you're in now. And just want to say that we put that together with lots of input at a time when the Lyme School had an academic director. There are 9 recommendations. There are 25 action steps that hopefully will direct the school for the next few years. Half of those action steps have to do with curriculum, instruction, and professional development. And my recollection of our discussions as a steering committee, and the 2 members of the board who are on that can certainly weigh in on that, but we felt pretty confident that with a position in the school that was devoted to those particular areas, they all had a good chance of succeeding. So I hope that the strategic plan and what it lays out as the growth of Lyme School is considered when you think about the administrative structure. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say that I did question when I read the notes from the retreat. It appeared that the only configuration that had an academic director considered is a configuration with a district administrator. So I was questioning why it wasn't configured with more often than once.
Can you speak to that?
I can, but maybe afterwards.
I think
don't know.
we'll be speaking to it a little bit later. Hi, Roger. Anyone else have any comments?
Hi, Yolanda. I was asked by Jen Wilcox, who couldn't make it tonight, to read a statement. So I'm going to read this for Jennifer Wilcox. I fully support the academic director. She's been a wonderful leader as she stepped in as interim principal at the last minute. She's been an incredible support to me as I took on a new role. Her knowledge and experience have been so crucial. She's a positive influence that our school cannot lose. That's Jennifer.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
I'd like to speak, but I don't know if I'm allowed to. I want to.
I'm not sure.
When it's done, when the comment is done, right? Or the public comment is
You
done.
can discuss it on that item agenda.
All right, so with that, we'll close public comment. So there has been a request to rearrange a little bit our agenda because we do have the tech people on right now. And so there are some questions specifically with the tech budget. Is that agreeable to all to the board? To just address the tech part first, and then we'll go back to the structure discussion. Do you have any objection from any board members?
Meaning in the budget part, in the 22-23 budget discussion.
Yeah, just the tech.
You know, the part that David, they're gonna go through their working.
All right, so I don't see any objections, so I will turn it over to Elizabeth to lead that, to start with that.
Thanks all. For a number of questions, you know, we've been sort of putting clarity to the technology portion of how we educate our kids. And the tech committee has come up with a phenomenal plan and then broke out budget line items so that we could have clarity to sort of what gets allocated in that direction. And it, you know, as we all sort of bring ourselves up to speed in the world of technology, of course, a lot of questions come to the table. And so we thought it would be worthwhile to have David and team speak to their sections around computer equipment, software, online services, and the like, in hopes that maybe it would help address the questions that a number of folks have had around tech, which would help us then be able to finalize our budget. These line items are currently all in the budget that we are going to discuss tonight. So with that, I guess it's Lydia, David, and Becky. So I hand it over to you guys.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Be looking at or anything if they want.
Yep. The board all has a copy of the tech budget, proposed tech budget. Probably be handy to have that out so you can reference it. We will be going through it, so have that handy. We'll be addressing this as a tech admin team, but I'll go ahead and get started. For some background information, the technology admin team, the technology committee, which is composed of teachers, staff, and admin, have researched and prepared this budget. In total, more than 8 professionals have compiled this data for you. I'd like to start with some key takeaways before we get into the details. There's less than a 50% increase overall from last year, and about half of that budget increase is a result of adopting PowerSchool, that student management software, database, pardon me. This was a necessary shift for the Lyme School. The Lyme SIS program that we had previously could no longer be feasibly supported to keep up with the pace of documentation and the student data management that we require. The online services piece increase is due to firming up a service agreement with a network engineer, which we've never had before. And no service agreement means no priority, and as a result, our network has been plagued with issues. Other increases are due to upgrades with our peripheral equipment. So those are things like projectors, Apple TVs, interactive displays, or smart boards, essentially anything that's not a computer. These items have been a part of our overall budget as a school for the past few years, but they've never been properly categorized under the tech budget. So starting this year, we are adopting it under the tech budget. Additionally, this equipment was purchased with no replacement cycle established for these items prior to this year. We now have aged out and obsolete equipment, smart boards and Apple TVs that need to be replaced. And the replacements that we are purchasing cost half the price of the equipment that's being replaced. So the proposal we have for the equipment is actually less than what the original equipment was originally priced at. Breaking down per line item, I'm going to begin with the computer equipment. In summary, this line item is actually decreasing overall, but the gains to the school are going to be school-wide. We will be replacing the entire staff devices with the same cost as it would to replace a quarter of the staff devices. So again, that's every staff member, including teachers, paras, the admin assistant, the nurse, they will all get new devices, and that was the same cost as what it would be for a quarter of the staff, or roughly 14 people. These devices are going to be more compatible with the shift to being a Google school that we have already been working within. We already use Google Workspace, so those are things like Gmail, Google Meet, Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google Classroom. This platform already houses all of our documentation, our communication, and our learning platforms. And additionally, we've already begun deploying Chromebooks as the primary available device to the majority of our students. This proposal also replaces all of the 8-year-old plus iMacs in the design lab that will no longer support the software needed in the classroom. And the leasing program that we propose will cost less to the school yearly than it would to purchase these items outright. When the lease is up, we have the options to return those aged out devices so that we're not strapped with the inventory and it's not taking up space or costing us money to dispose of. Takeaways on this line item are the equipment to do all of this, the cost for all of this is less than it's been in the past. And that's to transition and upgrade our devices to be more compatible with Google. Along with those cost savings, we'll also be streamlining instructional equipment so that there's a greater ease of teaching and learning. Becky now.
So I'm going to talk about the software line item. In summary, again, this is an item that is decreasing. We haven't been using some of the tools that we originally purchased when we shifted to fully remote learning. So those have been taken out of the budget. And it's completely scaled down to just what we're currently using. And one of the takeaways that I do want to point out is that we are asking for additional software without a specific label of what that might be yet. We have not had an opportunity. We literally put this budget together in October after the three of us were brand new, and we have not had an opportunity to identify specific things. There are plenty of amazing softwares out there that we'd like to be able to use, so that will give us an option to do that.
And I believe I'm going to talk briefly about the online services. The biggest expense increase, besides the fact we did find some items that were not budgeted that we could find in the previous years, is the service agreement for a network engineer. We have had in the last couple of years a lot of issues, and I think it's very important that we have a service agreement with someone who will be responsible for the entire network infrastructure, and that is part of it. Secondly, the Securely, which is a content filtering service that we have already started using, is incredibly important to provide the privacy and to understand what all of our students and teachers are doing across the board. And that is an incredibly important part of what online services is doing right now. Secondly, I continue to work very hard at getting the student management system up and running. That cost was minimal before this, and if you look at what it is now, that is the cost of what it is to do business, to have a really good student management system for the Lyme School.
Great. The next line item is repair parts. This budget line item is only increasing by $500, and this just accounts for recycling fees that's required to dispose of the backlog of equipment that we have that dates back to 2010.
I could talk about both the library book item and the library supply item. Both of those are increasing. We're asking for an increase to account for the fact that in the result of this is we've been meeting with the Converse Free Library, their board chair and the interim principal, myself, to really talk about where funding comes from. And historically, it hasn't really been anywhere. It's been funded for with blisters for books. So this is a result of us trying to actually formalize books being in a budget so that we have a consistent source for that funding. And the supplies budget increase would be to match that increase in the books that we would be purchasing.
David will be speaking to this.
I think that we were trying really hard to keep this at 20 minutes. And I think that if there are any questions, please ask them, because we, as Lydia brought up just a minute ago, we've spent a lot of time trying to uncover all of the costs in this district that in the past. And it's not just the tech admin, it is the tech committee. And I welcome any kind of questions you guys might have that involve technology.
We're not quite done yet. Dave, did you want to
go
speak
ahead.
to, that's okay. Did you want to speak to student management?
Oh, I thought I already did. The student
Okay,
management
well then-
is, yeah, the student management is Power School.
Mhm.
And that is what I've been working on. That's except for the time I spent in the schools working on the network to get the network working properly. I have spent an enormous amount of time just getting Power School ready for this district. At this time, teachers are all doing their attendance online. We are now creating the online report card that will go home to the parents for trimester 2. And I continue to work on it every day, making sure that all of the teachers and when the parents get these report cards, it'll be what is necessary.
Thank you.
And the last line item, and Becky will also have a summary for us, is the equipment instruction. So as I'd mentioned in the beginning, that these items have been a part of the overall budget for a while. We are just now capturing them under the tech budget. We would be spending twice as much as we're proposing if we replace these devices with the same equipment that was previously purchased. So instead of Apple TVs, we're looking at Chromecasts, and instead of smart boards, we're looking at interactive displays. Both of these equipment, along with the computer equipments that we're proposing, will standardize the operating system school-wide. So the student devices will now be able to project the classroom displays. The para devices will be able to mirror the student devices. The substitutes will work at the same systems as the teachers. The admin and the assistant and the nurse will also be using identical operating systems as their colleagues. The ease of tech use in the school really will be palpable.
So just to kind of sum up, we've consolidated months of work by a team of people into this tiny little presentation. Our primary goal with the budget is to support student learning and instruction. We're hopeful the explanation we've just given has clarified our thinking, and we do welcome questions from the board if you have any.
All right, what I thought we'd do to try to be timely is I would ask each board member so that they can weigh in and ask a question while we have you on the line. Sarah?
I had a quick one.
Go ahead, go for it.
I didn't see board docs listed under online services, and I didn't know whether that would fall under there or whether it would fall under the SAU budget. And so you're the budget committee, I'm sure it's there somewhere, but I just wanted to flag that.
It's SAU.
It's under the SAU.
It's under SAU.
Okay.
All right, Hayes?
I'm sure. I think I've expressed this in the past, but with currently having an interim administration, the tech costs going up somewhat significantly, and I just my hesitation, and I appreciate that it's all in one place, and I would love to see it in the budget next year, all in one place, so it's not individually. We talked about this too. I think that would be really helpful. I like to know what I'm looking at and for it to be really easy to see. My hesitation with any of this is just what does this do for us in subsequent years? Like, does it bind us? What else is out there as far as like our commitment now to the being a Google school? What if the next administration has something else, you know, that they prefer? What commitment is all of this? What kind of commitment are we making with all of this that we can't return from? Or I mean, again, I don't know what other options there are out there, and what the cost for technology in other schools of our size is. I haven't seen those comparisons. And I think that since it's perceptibly going up, this is just a question that I have to ask on behalf of, you know, having been a board member in a while and being a taxpayer and being a parent.
Yeah, thank you, Hayes. If Becky, David, do you mind if I speak to that a little bit?
Oh, I hope you do.
Great. We have been a Google school for a while. This is prior to any of us coming on board. I couldn't honestly tell you how long we've been a Google school. Being a Google school is not just the equipment we use, it's everything that we do. So when we are signing on to new software, it's our single sign-on, it's our data privacy, it is our email communication. It's pretty standard at a lot of schools, and I can provide you the resource of the NHCTO site if you'd like, that most schools are typically a Google school. Some other companies opt to be Outlook. Obviously, that transition is always available. That option is always available. Google is actually a very cheap service, and a lot of the services they offer are free. I think it will always be a pretty competitive option for schools. It doesn't really bind us, I think, in the sense that what we're looking at, especially with the leasing program, is going to be a little bit more flexible, because those things will be able to kind of release ourselves from devices that age out, and we'll be able to streamline a lot of these things. So we actually did kind of strap ourselves, in my opinion, with a lot of the Apple devices previously, which aren't very compatible anymore with a lot of what schools are implementing. Also, as far as what this part of the tech budget is in relation to the rest of the budget, I can't speak to it, but there is a lot of great discussions with tech people across the state, again, in that NHCTO Google group. If you want to join that, I believe you're welcome to. A lot of tech budgets comprise about 1% to 2%, some school districts 3% nation or statewide.
Thank you, Lydia.
Can I follow up, Elizabeth? I'm just curious to hear at some point Corinne's take on this proposal as well.
You want to go ahead? Do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, sure. That's what, at the beginning, I thought it was pretty critical to get a solid tech plan in place. Because in my mind, that's what guarantees you to continue on the journey of developing technology in the way that the committee wants to develop it. And it shouldn't be dependent on changing when any one administrator comes in. And everybody has to stand firm for that, because if it's a board approved document, which it is, then that's your guidance moving forward, no matter who your leaders are. So that was one thing that I really was insistent on at the beginning, is to get an approved plan, because that keeps you on the trajectory that you want to move in. The other thought. Absolutely agree, and have had the conversations with the office that technology today needs to be its own entity. So that people aren't looking like we were this year, well, where's the projectors line item? Where's this line item? Where's that? It needs to be broken out in its own separate category of technology, so that it clearly identifies staffing, repairs, software, all of those areas that are related to technology, because it is the only way that anybody in the school district can function. It's a way of doing business. It's not an add-on anymore. It's not, you know, if we need it. Nobody can operate without it. So I think that's the direction you're moving into, if I understand it correctly, but that's what I would recommend. To have it broken out, and I think we've talked about being able to do that in the budget system after this budget gets approved in March, and then we'll organize it so that we've got it all broken out. So moving forward now, you will start to have a history in the budget cycle of technology, and it will not be something that you can add on or take off. It's a given for operation. So that's my sense on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yola, did you have anything more?
Yeah, so I have two questions. One, so I'm still stuck on the 48 Chromebooks for the staff replacement. Mainly because I guess I don't feel that I understand that there's that many people that need a Chromebook, I mean, which sounds terrible, but that's not. I mean, like, does every aide need it? Does, you know, do all paras need a Chromebook? Do all those who are working side by side with students, are they all, or I'm asking because I really don't know.
Yeah.
And is it also something that you would do, because we're looking at a 4-year lease? Is it going to be 48 now, and then it's every year we exchange some of them? Or is this like in 4 years, we're going to get 48 next, but again? Do you know what I mean? How does that work?
Yeah, I can answer at least the first part of the question. There are 48 staff members, and it's pretty expected, I guess, in any work environment now, that if you're expecting a teacher or staff member or anyone to communicate, you know, with Gmail, to have a calendar, to keep up with any kind of communication, that you would also provide a school device. We do provide devices to all of our staff members currently. So that includes our facilities director, that includes our paras, that includes our teachers. Everybody has a school issued device currently. And the 48 devices that we're proposing to replace all of them is so that we can standardize what every operating system that everybody's on. And again, that cost of replacing all 48 of them is the same that would have been to replace the 14 iMacs that are not, pardon me, the Apple MacBook Airs that would have been up for replacement recycle this year. And I think Dave is a little bit more familiar with the leasing system, so I can let him speak to what our replacement cycles would be for those devices.
Yes, as the tech admin went through all of the different devices that we now had and what we needed, there are a lot of districts that have gone to the lease program, and this lease program will capture most of what we need. And Yolanda, one of the questions you asked was what happens? Well, in 4 years, yes, those Chromebooks will be out of age and they will need to be replaced in 4 years. But that means that we all know that we have a price to pay for that for the next 4 years, a yearly cost for the devices we need. And that's what the lease program does. It spreads it out over 4 years. And one of the other questions that came up is, what are we going to do with the MacBook Airs that are new enough? They are not going away. We will repurpose them. There are a lot of different ways that we can reuse those MacBook Airs. So I didn't want anybody to think that those are going away or not being used. We will use them. There are a lot of purposes for MacBooks that we can still use in the classroom.
Thank you. Yeah. Did you guys want to add?
Yeah, David, I just had a question, or Lydia or Becky, in terms of going through a lease process versus a purchase, and having a replacement cycle so that certain grade levels would be replaced, you know, on a cycle basis. Is it that much less expensive to do the leasing versus buying the devices and then recycling?
Yeah.
Or?
Yes, it is less expensive, and that is why so many districts have gone to leasing. It's just like if you look at the copiers, we generally, I don't know about Lyme, But generally, the copiers are not purchased outright. We purchase those copiers, the big multi-purpose copiers, for a 3-year lease or a 4-year lease. It's the same thing. We're just looking at the devices for this district.
Yeah, so David, so the $18,000 is going to be an annual cost. That will be every year for the next 4 years. I just want to clarify that.
Yes, that is true. And then what we would look at is there will be a small amount for next year to capture the devices that are old again, but it will not, this is the big year right now. 18,000 is what it will cost to supply the school with all the devices they need for the next 4 years. That's exactly right. It is a cost of doing business for all these devices.
And that, again, is a decrease from years
That's
past.
right.
So I did have a second question. I did notice this is all with regards to the school, and in the SAU the administration budget, there's also network for 14,500, network and computer maintenance, and also computer equipment for 1,000. So I'm wondering, has that been talked about to kind of to bring it together, or?
So our software, just for clarification purposes, we're not connected to your network here at the school in any way.
Right.
We have a closed system, and it's really just an internal server, and our financial software is on the server. So it's a closed network. The amount that we have for network, in the network line, that's for our Tyler Technology in support. We literally own the financial software. In order to purchase the financial software, it costs about $400,000. So, but you have owned that for a long time. So what we have in that line is just for technical support when we run into an issue or have to make adjustments, or they help us out. The other thing we have there is our server network maintenance. That is with All Access, and we contract with them. We are backed up to the cloud. So our financial software and our entire server is back to the cloud, and that's who does that for us.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Bill?
I don't have
You
anything
don't have
else.
any questions? Yeah,
I don't have any questions.
and Vince, are you there? Is he on?
Vince is.
I am.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Did you have any questions?
Can you actually see me? Oh, there you
Well,
go.
we do now. Yes, I see
Yeah,
you.
now.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm sitting here in the pitch black with headphones on. So if the audio or the video is bad, forgive me. So the first thing I'll say about the tech budget is that I think the move to a single platform is a really smart move. And I think that, yeah, I understand we're going to have a one-time fairly large cost for that, which is fine. I mean, the problem I think we've had in the school is that the number of different platforms we've had have cost us to be, there's a lot more sort of maintenance and care and feeding and repair that has to be done if you're sort of, if you support a lot of different systems. I think this is good. So I support that. One thing that I am though concerned about is that the budget is so substantially grown from last year. Personally, I think there's things in there that we don't need or that we need a further discussion about to consider keeping that number in check. And I don't know what you want to do about that, if we should have that discussion now, because the truth is that you've given your justification. There's some things that I think we could be a lot more frugal with, and I'll give you an example, and then you can tell me how you want to handle this. So you've got $4,500 in there for miscellaneous software, right? I know you justified it. My concern is, right, we don't know what we're going to spend it on. Not only that, the state of New Hampshire is currently trying to pass a law that forces schools to use free software only. You may be aware of it, right? So those are line items where I think we could reduce. The second one, for instance, is Power School. We've got a teacher evaluation module. We're a very small school. Do we really need that module? Can this be done in a spreadsheet? Right. So, so point being is that, you know, I prefer not to have a longer discussion right now about reducing that number, but I think the number is too high as it is today. And I think that about other budget items as well. So it's not just technology that gets that, but.
Oh, we're gonna go through the budget in a little while. I guess, you know, Lydia, David, Becky, is there anything you want to say to Vince's comment conceptually? I think, you know, if I'm hearing it right, we've just collected all of the tech pieces. Not all of it hasn't been there before. It just didn't show up, like the grease boards or whatever. the interactive board, I don't even know what they're called, but you know. So, you know, these are things that have been there and been part of our budget. It just didn't pop out because we didn't tabulate it with technology, but.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think to respond to Vince's point, I would put it back on you all to say if this is a budget that you're not going to adopt, just like any other section of your budget, if you need to bounce it back to us to make those final decisions, we will do that. But we feel pretty strongly that if cuts need to happen, that we would be the ones making that decision.
Very helpful. Thank you, Becky.
Mm-hmm. You mean you'd select the specific line items to make the cuts in? Yeah. One question though, Becky, that I do have for you is the content filtering. I think that's an extremely difficult thing to talk about without having had a policy discussion about that. And I don't think that has happened yet at the Lyme School or the community. So who's currently deciding what gets in and what does not get into the school? Like what rules
Are you
do we
speaking
follow for that?
specifically about securely?
Yeah.
That we just had a meeting today with the school guidance counselor, the interim principal, with Lydia and myself. So I guess that would be a question for administration.
Additionally, the content filtering has always existed. So when we had Sophos firewall, most of the content filtering that's happening right now is just a transition. So it's the standard boilerplate content filtering. And forgive me for saying this in public, but things like pornography, gambling, that's the kind of content filtering that we're talking about currently. As far as further content filtering, that we are still in discussion. We are still reviewing the policy. We're still reviewing what the best practice is. But as of right now, it's just doing standard boilerplate content filtering.
And one of the things I'll add about the content filtering, which I think is very important, there have been several terrible episodes around the country where a student was bullied and something happened that the district was not aware of. One of the things that our content filtering does is it will send the principal an email if there is a flag, and it's not just bullying, it could be suicide prevention, things like that. That is what's the most important thing about content filtering these days, is that if you just do the default content filtering, it doesn't give you back the information you need to watch what's going on with your students. And certainly, if any school board member wants to see what some of this content filtering and how it works, we would love to have you join our tech committee, and we can certainly show you why this is important. Or I could send you additional information in that.
Yeah, no, I think the discussion is not so much about the content, but when does it cover? When does it not cover? Right? When students take devices home, like does it work then? Right? Like questions like that is what I think need to be answered, because that sets parents, right? Like parents' expectations is, oh, that's great. We're content filtering. The kids get the device home, and they can find content that's inappropriate or what have you, right? So I think that is a way broader discussion, right? And it seems to me, and I don't think we did this in the past, because the budget line item was simply for the Sophos firewall, not for the content filtering. I think that's why it's more expensive, but I don't know that for sure. But I know that this has in other districts been an absolute, like a nightmare topic, right, in the community. So that's why I say it's not, this needs to be carefully evaluated. And if we're going to do that, we should be very clear about what it is when it works, what it is when it doesn't work, and what parents can expect out of the money we're spending on that.
All right. wrap this up, we're well over the time at this point.
All right.
Thank you so much, Lydia, David, and Becky, for being
Thank
on.
you.
Sounds like it's going to be an ongoing conversation because it's a moving, it's not stagnant, and therefore, and we're all learning and, raising different points that are important to be able to talk through. So thank you so much, Elizabeth. Oh,
Sorry.
Sorry.
I did want to say, like, I've never seen anything as thorough as this spreadsheet produced by our tech committee. And I do not know if I can say that this is spending more money without, I mean, they've essentially pulled it all together for us to say, this is the real cost. They're being brutally honest with us. I heard other board members saying the costs are going up. I don't know if that's so. So I just wanted to thank the tech team for being so thorough and clear with this. It is very helpful and I appreciate it.
Well, and I think, as Green said, we're going to now have it broken out and it's something we will be able to track a lot more clearly. And it is part of our learning in today's environment. So thank you for that comment.
Can I ask
wait a
one-
minute, there was
Can I ask one last question, please? Oh, he's.
Hayes has a couple more questions. All right, Hayes, if they can make it quick, that would be great. Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand the time constraints, but I also, we have to appreciate that this is the first real robust conversation we've had about all of these pieces as a group. Where are iPads listed in here?
We're
First
not
question.
purchasing any iPads.
You
for
are
next
not.
No.
So what is the overall plan for below third grade for devices?
They currently have devices that aren't going to be aging out anytime soon. And I can let Becky speak a little bit more towards how we use those devices.
Yeah, it's not necessarily my question on how we use them. I was just curious what devices are being used and what the plan for those. So this is next year's budget. And I think that it's important for everyone to understand, like, I appreciate understanding year over year costs and what's going to come to us perhaps unexpectedly in then the next budget. Like, when do iPads come into play as far as maintenance and being cycled in or out? And then my other question is sort of related, because it's related to the existing MacBooks that were recently purchased that are still, I would consider, relatively new. And I know you say there's a function for them in the school, but also what happens when those age out? Are we going to be replacing those? I just want to be sure we're not getting into a cycle of maintaining with extra cost and cycling through these other pieces that are sort of auxiliary to this presented plan. And, and maybe we do unload some of those at this point while they're still marketable. So it's related to, I would love to see everything on here too, and just to have a good understanding, I think, of what we have, because we have had a lot of devices, where they're going, what we're doing with them, and the overall plan for those as well.
I mean, I can speak just a little bit. We've talked about creating a cart with those MacBooks. We've talked about using them to replace some of the Lydia, I'm going to say the wrong thing. The devices that are in each classroom, the one like in Heather's room that's not working.
Oh, the iMacs.
Thank you. The iMacs that we have.
So that
iMacs
dates back to 2010.
Yeah, the iMacs are ancient, and currently they're kind of the backup computer in each classroom. And rather than replacing those, we'll use some of those MacBooks for those. We have talked about the possibility of using a buyback program to recoup some of those funds. We're going to be in a phase where we're going to kind of be experimenting with what works best and what is being utilized best. Right now, we do have iPads on an iPad cart that we could use to replace some of the iPads that phase out in the upcoming years. We do have a cycle that we're working on. We don't have it ready to present to you right now. We're also working on clearing out inventory that has just been stacked in a closet. And Lydia's been working on that and going through the recycling program. So I don't think any of that we can get into right now. I don't know if that answers your question sufficiently or not, but.
Thank you.
So I just have one last question. I know I asked about grant funding, if there's any plans for grant funding, and I don't know if the lease program allows to be paid for by grants. I don't know if that's something that you guys have looked into, if that's a possibility, where we could plan to lighten the budget with the intent of getting grants to cover some of this.
Well, grants have to be used for supplemental and not supplanting. So you can't budget for things in grants that your local budget should be providing on an annual basis.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you again. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be talking again. I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, so so for the public, we are bouncing back to our agenda to talk about administrative structure. As I mentioned earlier, the board has met 3 times in our retreat. The most recent time we really came up with, we had homework, and we brought to the retreat all of the pros and cons that we could think of, and all of the various structures we could think of. But mainly, the main thought was really the district administrator, academic director structure versus a traditional superintendent and principal structure. Like was mentioned in public comment, there was questions about the interim structure, and that was on the table. Like I said, everything has been put out there. We did not necessarily include the academic director position in all of the other than the initial district administrator and academic director position, because of the fact that we are not planning on changing that at this point. And so that is a conversation for further on down, and potentially the head administrator, whoever that may be further on down the line. As usually, the board really has the one employee, which is the head administrator, and the rest of the staff is chosen and hired by that chief administrator. So with that, I want to ask the board if any further questions or comments, or open up for discussion.
Yolanda, I'm very sorry. This is Tom again. I didn't realize there wasn't an LEA comment section tonight. Can I put that I would have done it during public comment? I'm sorry to interrupt at this point. Is that okay?
Yes.
So this is Tom Harkins. I'm the co-president of the LEA, the teachers union. And I'd just like to read a portion of the official LEA statement regarding the administrative structure of our district, which we sent to Corrine in November and to Yolanda in December. And this is a quote from that statement, which is: the academic director position has provided many professional benefits for teachers and greatly improved the overall academic program for our students. So that's a statement that the LEA met and discussed and agreed upon and put forward as a public statement regarding that position in particular. Sorry to interrupt that at this time. I would have done it earlier. Thank you for letting me have that time.
That's all right. Thank you, Tom.
I'd like to make a statement. I'd like to speak about the document which came from our retreat on January 3rd and later shared on the Lyme listserv via an email from Yolanda. The point I want to make, however, has less to do with the document itself and more to do with the process which led to the document being released. I came from our retreat under the impression that our notes from the meeting would be summarized in a one-page document that would be shared publicly once everyone on the board had a chance to review and approve the summary. The document, which was released, however, was quite different. It contained a long list of pros and cons of the different administrative structures we are considering. These comments were edited for public consumption, but it was not clear when this document was distributed that it would to the board members that we were to provide feedback. In terms of process, I think we could benefit from having a clear set of action steps or tasks to do at the end of our meetings. There should be an owner of the task, a deadline, and a clear sense of deliverables. This would help avoid the confusion which I think occurred last week. I also want to be more careful about the nature of documents for release. My understanding is this document quickly circulated amongst teachers and administrators at the Lyme School. The broad scope of comments made it difficult for these readers to understand the information itself or whether it reflected the board's opinion. Given that the community and teachers continue to have a lot of questions about the future of the Lyme School, I'm concerned that we did not put our best foot forward with the release of this type of document. I think having a good process for actions after meetings will help us in the future, and look forward to hopefully getting your feedback on this recommendation. Thanks.
Well, I will speak to that because I was the one who summarized it. At the end of our meeting, I took photographs of what was on our whiteboard, and I announced that I would be sharing this with the public in the interest of transparency to make sure that the public was aware that we are thinking of everything, and kind of no stone left unturned. I will say that I did leave out, like you said, the comments that there were some more sensitive comments, and there were specific to individuals, and that has been left out in the interest of personnel privacy. However, I would welcome to hear if other board members felt that this was something other than what we had agreed to at the conclusion of our retreat. Because this is what I had said I would do, and everyone was, as I understood it, everyone was in agreement.
I had no problem with it. It was my understanding that we were going to release a document. And I, however, I do recognize like that it could cause consternation, but the goal was to be as open as possible and let the members of the community in. I do think maybe it's unclear that, I mean, I think we're making it clear tonight that it's every single thing written on that page is not a statement from the board. It is a collection of statements that helped fuel a discussion. And I do think sometimes, and this maybe is the only other comment about, I remember there were like 3 categories that we kicked off the conversation with. And so Sue Merrill just asked a question about like, I didn't see this, and Jim Norris or Sarah Shipton asked another question, I didn't see this option. I think there are probably some other ways that we were talking about ways to organize the structure that maybe weren't clear because we started with the 3, but our conversation was actually quite ranging, and we were very open to like, okay, well, what about this versus this? And so that is my recollection. And I don't think it represents every single thing that we just discussed. You know, every iteration, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I think Sarah makes an important distinction between a document that is a board document versus individual opinions. And I think what was presented and shared that might have been misunderstood as a board document was truly the individual opinions of board members.
And others.
So that's why I will say that that's why I led the very first line says these are the thoughts and observations that the board shared after hearing from many sides. So that's what I attempted to do. I apologize if that's not what came through. Vince and Hayes, do you guys want to chime in?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I agree with all that has been said, including what Elizabeth said. There is we have a duty to make sure that a process that we follow is identified such as that process and not necessarily a conclusive end result of a board deliberation, right? So, and you tried that, Yola. I will give you that, and I will give Elizabeth that as well. My understanding was that the retreats are, they're subject to right to know. The things that we come out of those retreats with, are available for the public, which is what you tried to do, Yola. But, just as a comment to everyone is that this was a long list of off-the-cuff thoughts that everybody had that were put up on the board for discussion, right? And if you really look through them, they're not internally consistent, right? There are some that on the left column say we'll save costs, some on the right column say we'll save costs. Well, which is it, right? So a lot of different angles were discussed there. That all that said, I do think the public has a right to access the thought process that we went through, and that was my understanding.
Dave, do you have anything else?
Thanks. I believe we got the document to our inboxes before it was attached to the agenda. And I understood that this was the process that would happen. And with the additional information, that it was our opinions and brainstorming session. This is the results, and no decisions were made. These are our thoughts, and putting it out there because our goal being transparency. And that was the best attempt at that, I believe. And that was my understanding.
All right, thank you. Well, I will try to make that more clear for the future. For future decisions and actions. Is there, regarding the structure, any additional thoughts? I mean, there's a lot of information on here. I don't know if all of you have had a chance to reread everything. Any additional thoughts, or?
This is going to be the topic on the 25th, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about it again on the 25th.
Yeah.
But I think that it would be good to hear maybe straw polls wouldn't be a bad idea, to hear what people are leaning towards.
Should I answer Sarah's question?
Sure, yes, absolutely.
I don't know if she's still here. I know Jim is still here, but earlier in public comments, Sarah Shipton asked what the salary cost would be for an academic director, a full-time principal, and a part-time superintendent. And so very quickly, I could just say I would give that a range because we don't know. But I would say at the low end, it would be $260,000, and at the high, $300,000. And that's salaries, no benefits would be included in those figures.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
I also think there was a question earlier that that I think maybe, I don't remember who asked the question, but all of the thoughts on that document that were attached are from board members. Right. And I think that maybe there was a question as to whose thoughts and opinions those were, but all that were on that document were board member documents. Maybe that was Jim.
Yeah, with the caveat that board members had insight from the LEA and the administrative team. Right. So we went into that meeting having already heard from what some of those stakeholders desired or what they thought about the structure. So maybe there was some influence.
That's a good qualification, Jen. Thanks. I don't, those, as far as our personal thoughts based on our interactions in the public and our understanding from the LEA's statement as well.
So is there any board member that would like to speak to what their thoughts are regarding this and where we are at? Anybody? I mean, I guess individual
We were
thoughts.
trying to give information to the public so that they have time to digest.
Right.
And then we meet again, but
Well, so, and I guess I would stress also that, like I said earlier, that we have not excluded positions based on any of the things that are out there. So that's not, I think that we heard from the LEA today, and multiple people supporting the academic director. I think we were very aware of the quality and asset that she brings, that our current academic director brings. I will add, though, that any cons that were listed on this spreadsheet regarding academic director was specifically not, we were not specifying individuals. And so I think that's an important piece to try to keep in mind, that it was the what if, if we had somebody else, not necessarily Elise, positives, negatives of the position. So. And Tom, yes, it will be an action item on the 25th. So. Bree, do you have anything else to add?
Since you asked, yes. It wasn't until I heard the public comment that I realized that the perception was that there was going to be elimination of jobs. And I never thought that one bit, because we were talking about how to structure the district in the building. And we did not go down that conversation of positions that currently exist. My recollection is the district administrator, academic director structure was 2 building administrators. And the second one was a superintendent and a principal, which were 2 administrators. So I was viewing and listening to your conversations through those structures. But I think we all know, as I certainly do, that the job description of the academic director that is on paper, not counting the additional duties as that were added, are an extreme value to this district and the community. And for lack of a better word, I want to call it curriculum director or curriculum coordinator, not that it has to be changed, just for the context of clarifying the job description the academic director did in the past are the tasks that needs to continue to support the teachers and the students. So in talking about it, I feel more comfortable just using curriculum because I know what I'm talking about versus academic director, but you all know it as an academic director. So I never gave it a thought that the perception would be that we were eliminating that support. I think we were all very clear that that needs to continue. It's value here, it's a rich benefit, and that needs to stay, whatever you call it. So just wanted to add that. So I feel bad that that was the perception, because it's not what was in the conversation. It was more the big picture administration part of it.
I think we might be getting hung up on titles too. And so just to piggyback on Kareem, because in our conversation, I know there were times when we ourselves were trying to put the label on all the jobs. So we were like, we know we need all these things. How do we
meet the needs?
Yeah. That was my impression of our discussions.
All right. Anyone else like to say anything else? All right, we'll be open for public comment at our 25th meeting. And again, it will be an action item at that point where we take a vote to move forward with a decision, a final decision.
What would that look like, Yola?
I'm not sure yet.
I mean, would it be that there would be multiple job descriptions that we actually are bringing forward to, yes, we want to move forward on that job description so that we'll have all the titles sorted out by then, or what is the goal?
I don't think you're ready to look at the whole district. I think that after you retreat, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you prioritized that you needed a full-time principal and you needed a superintendent, and that you would move forward on those positions and then take another year or 2 years to reassess what else you had to change, if you had to change it. So there was no rush to change things other than to make sure you had some strong leadership. And that the rest of the school continued with the services that you have. That's my understanding of it.
And I will, I think it's safe to say that we felt pretty strongly that we're not interested in searching for an interim solution.
Correct.
We may end up with that if we're in a worst case scenario. However, we're not looking towards that. We would like to satisfy that part and not have to leave that hanging for the future. So, but again, it was talked about, it was discussed, which is why it's on the document. All right. Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else? Yeah. So, yeah, one more time, just to clarify that each of those options that were on the board all included the academic director. We did not eliminate that position at all. Okay. So next item on the agenda is the RFP for food services.
Okay. So really at this point, the state of New Hampshire has reached out. So if the plan is to go forward with an RFP for food service for next year, the state has sent out documentation that they would like that process to begin now. So there are actually contracts that have been awarded already for next year. The bidding process is arduous. I don't know if anybody was here last time we did it. Before we hired our chef Paul, we went through a bidding process at that time. So anyway, just sort of need a commitment from the board that we're going to go forward to subcontract out food service next year and not have the model of a chef in the building, a local chef in the building, so that I can move forward and start that.
I'll move that.
Moved by Glenn.
I'll second it.
Second by Glass.
This is to help our numbers essentially, right?
Is there any further discussion or questions?
Could you repeat the motion?
Sure, it's to move forward with an RFP process for food services.
For the FY23
For
school year.
For the FY23 school year. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Vince? Yes, okay. So that's a unanimous. Excellent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Can we also quickly make a decision on, can we post the tech? So that once the grant comes in, we can move forward with that. We approved the job description, but we didn't vote to post it. That, I thought we did, but we went to the minutes. Well, the minutes didn't clearly state that we voted to post, so I'm bringing it up because what I'd like to be able to do, we should hear from the grant in the next few days. Then the finance committee can come back together, have a conversation and call a special meeting to get it completed. But we have to approve the, I'd like to get it posted so that we can jumpstart the process. So that's why I'm putting it out there.
It's not currently in the grant. We have to wait till the current expenses that have been put in the grant come back approved, so a new activity can be added.
Right.
Could be,
but I'd like to get it posted so that
Could
it's
we
ready
wait
to
until
go.
the 25th, maybe?
Or do we post and say conditional grant?
Well,
What
yeah,
are the
that's
options?
like conditional on funding or something like that. I don't even know.
why don't
if
you
you
put it
have
on the
to say
next
that.
agenda, because we're gonna get way late.
Yeah,
and
because then
off
you're
track.
gonna have to pay for it out of your, right? If you actually, you got
So-
hired.
So we would be
can't
clear
post
on the
it.
grant, is that what
Right.
you're
Let's put it that way.
saying? We should have more,
I
a
think
better.
we'll be a little, we'll know how much funding is available for potentially putting something in a grant.
Okay.
So
By
we'll move it, so we'll
the
talk
25th.
about it on the 25th then.
I can only
And
hope.
make that
I
decision.
can only hope.
All right, and so now we'll move back to the budget.
Okay, awesome, great. Okay, so we're in fairly good shape. I'm gonna try to sort of go through the big items and then, you know, open it up to questions and then sort of get into the nitty gritty. I sent out a document today trying to around 2 o'clock, trying to address questions and sort of outline the moving parts. As you know, the last time we were together, one of the questions was staying under 50 employees. We did a number, in talking with the administration and Kareem, we did shift some positions around to contracted roles. We just did the food service piece moments ago. We looked at the custodial work. We've been contracting services, and it's working well. And so we're going to continue to do that, which reduced half-time FTE. We did, through conversation again, a reduction of a para for the school year. That's a 1 FTE. We had also a role around band as to a contracted role at 0.41. Janet did the analysis today to just check that it met all the things. And the reality is this brings us with a range of 46.9 FTEs to 49 based on what month. So we have made it with all of this adjustments, which is really huge because for the district, the potential cost is in the 250, potentially could be 250 to 300,000 if we had to become a large district. A large something, it just sounds funny, a large district.
Yeah.
So anyways, with a lot of good effort on a lot of parts, this is a little separate from the budget, but it had a material budget outcome if we weren't able to get there. So thank you all for that.
I just want to make one caveat in my ACA thing. I had to use this year's calendar because we don't have one for next year. So it might look a little different depending on the month and the number of days in the month.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Secondly, there was a lot of discussion about, the breakdown of teachers and classroom and the like. I just want to note that in this budget, this was the recommendation of the administration and teachers. Due to the size and nature of the first grade, and given the likely probability that this is a class that should be split, we have put that teacher in the budget. It does not affect our FTE count because we have other classes that are shifting around, and the FTE count won't change, but that is the objective right now. Is the likelihood of this split is pretty high in probability. There was a section under, it actually came up in tech and in regular instruction around books. The reality is that the reading program books are ancient. They were being used when my kids were in the school. It makes me feel old, but that said, that collection has been recommended to be updated. That's why you see the bump in the book line. And then as you heard earlier from Becky, there's a lot of conversations with the library about the children's collection. And so that 4,500, which includes ebooks, was in those two lines were in there that way. High school, as we talked about earlier, is we continue to think it is prudent to underfund that section because we have by 10 students, because we have a trust fund that we use for enrollment smoothing, and it has built up, and therefore it behooves us at this point to try to spend that down a bit. And so we have, as I said, underfunded that by 10 students. In terms of special ed, the main increases are due to costs for services of our students in high schools. There is an out-of-district placement. We are partially funding that, not fully funding that. And the idea will be to use funds from the trust should we need to fully fund that position. You will see the K-8 instruction section is up by 7.1%. This has to do with the principal position. We do have a 0.4 position in for the middle school, having to do with the size of the middle school enrollment and the need, because they shift classes and the like. This 0.4 is to cover that that need in the middle school. We spent quite a bit of time on the tech. I know from Vince, he wants to go into the line items a bit, but in general, we do have some funding in the consulting line at 15,000. Obviously, we hope that the model that's being developed and built out will create more continuity and stability in that line. Will maybe get underspent a bit, but you can't overspend. And right now with all the shifts, we felt keeping that consultant line in was important so we can focus on the optimization of PowerSchool, which is the replacement for our current database system, which is a multifaceted database system. That's why you see these additional modules, because they are taking the place of components of this database that we are retiring. And we want to make sure that that is fully utilized. It is expensive software, but it is in a number of other schools around the area, and it is very well received and utilized. So hopefully we will gain benefit from that. There was a question around furniture. It's not a large line. There was a reference to 2021. I believe that it had nothing to do with COVID, but some additional furniture for outfitting the classroom. And so with that, those were sort of the big picture items to the budget. And I now open it up to questions. And as I should add that the budget is at 3.26. We worked really hard to keep it pretty close to what we had last time, even with the moving parts. It was well received by the budget committee last time, so I don't foresee any issues with this budget. I think the other piece is this now also incorporates all of the salary increases, both for the union and the non-union staff. When we did the budget last time, it did not have the non-union numbers in because we had to agree to what those numbers were. So this is all in this budget at 3.26. So with that, what I thought I would do is do a go around again, because trying to make sure everybody gets their word in. This time, why don't I start with you, Phil? Do you have any comments or questions?
Just a clarification, Janet, on the superintendent role that we have in here. Can you confirm that's at 0.6?
0.6 with 0.6 benefits. So the number came out a little bit higher. I think I sent you an email just due to the exponential nature of New Hampshire retirement and the 403B. Yes, 0.6.
Thanks.
Sure.
Anything else? Okay, Jen?
I mean, I'm not, yeah, I don't, we were talking about the budget a lot, and I think I said most of what I have to say, and I guess I just want to give voice to the fact that I understand it's only a I don't have the right.
3.26
graph right now. But overarchingly, our cost for people at the school is relatively high, given that we're a district of 1, and given what our ADM is when we compare it to other districts, albeit the very few districts that look like that. And the even fewer districts that look like that in Grafton County, where the cost of living right is relatively high, which I think impacts salaries and things that are required of us, to pay people, because it is an expensive place to live. So yes, so I guess I just want to
just give voice to that. It's only a 3.2% increase, and that feels very manageable, especially considering the rate of inflation this year. But it still feels like we're running a very expensive school. And I just want to know why. And where, so.
Hayes?
Well, to Jen, do you have any suggestions for this budget in particular? With recognizing that it's not an overall, a big increase, but it does add up year over year and puts us into the bracket you're discussing. I'm just curious to know if you do have any. I had a question that I don't know if it was answered or not. The staff salaries under the instruction line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 2022.
Is the coordinator, is that in that line? And it wasn't in there before, that's why. I mean,
Technology, you said?
Technology.
Gotcha.
That coordinator.
Yep. Okay. And then the books, I certainly brought that up. I think that increase should be divided out over time for the books, that book increase. It just seems, and I know you mentioned something in your email in response about it being separated out, but I didn't see where that was in particular. I don't think kids shouldn't have the books, but I think having one large expenditure increase is something that will be seen, last year, and you look at year over year. I think that in our budgets, we should be having what we would consider sustainable increases over time. I'm not, maybe you want to speak to these piece by piece, or people can weigh in on them. I don't know. I'm interested to hear what other people think about the expenditure for first grade instructor. That's a really big expense. And I know that we put them in for what's our amount that we're using now for that? 90 something?
Oh, no, the cost, well, I don't know.
116,000.
116.
116 for one instructor. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's the instruction and benefits.
Right. I'm curious to hear what others have to say surrounding that, because that's another pretty significant increase as well.
Well, just to that point, it's not an increase because we have an enrollment instructor already staffed at the school, because the 5th grade is split, right? And then, or is the 4th grade is split, but the 5th grade is moving to middle school. So that's technically not a split class, right? So what you're not seeing is what would be a decrease in the budget if the 1st grade, right? And I think so there's no increase in the budget because we're splitting the 1st grade.
And I appreciate that point. I think that when we first saw the budget a month or so ago, I had assumed that enrollment instructor was not in there, because I knew that the way the classes were going to be with the middle school, where that enrollment teacher had been and how the classes had been divided, that we would no longer need that. And that was the current plan in the last conversation related to the enrollment teacher, that this would, I know that every year is different, that this would be probably going forward, that we wouldn't need that instructor. So, this is all new news. I didn't know that teacher was in the budget at that time. So yes, to your point, Jen, I think that the budget could be lower without that person in, and therefore there would be a less of an increase.
Okay, those all your, are you done with all your points?
Oh, I'm not sure. I was curious just to hear a discussion around that, but also my comment related to the furniture, which is somewhat similar to your point about the consultant and not overexpending line items. And that was my point to the budget committee regarding that.
Spending line items is overexpending the bottom line. This year, we've got a lot of over expenditures and we're gonna have trouble. We're gonna get there, but the point is you want to budget adequately because you can't overspend that bottom line. It's not by line item.
However, we have had more recent guidance that we've heard that if individual line items are overexpended, then it comes to a board discussion.
Get a board report once a month that gives you the report of every line and expenditure. It does not require a board action if a line item is overspent. That is incorrect.
I'll have to go back to the source on that and get a clarification.
Okay. So in terms of the books, the last time they ordered books for this program was in 2001.
2001 is the copyright date.
And
on the
so,
reading
you know,
materials.
I don't think you want to be saving dollars. Go ahead, jump in, Free.
I just want to clarify that it's under the books line item, but what it actually is upgrading the reading instructional program. So that's why it's so expensive, because it is a program. It's not individual level trade books or storybooks. So I just wanted to clarify that it is a structured instructional program for the early elementary grades. And the one that they're currently using is a 2001, very obsolete program. So I just wanted to clarify that, see if that helps, because I know, Hayes, you were talking about just books and could we break it up or whatever, but I just wanted to make sure you understood that it is a program, you know, an all-inclusive program, not just individual book titles. So I just wanted to
Typically,
clarify that.
when you adopt new materials, that comes with everybody being trained at the same
Correct.
time.
It's
The-
professional development to be trained on how to use the program. So it's an upgrade, and yes, it is costly when you do that, but if you haven't done it since 2001, that's, sorry.
Does that mean
It
that
is time, let's put it that way.
Does
That's
that mean that not year after year?
No.
No, you're just gonna replace consumables
Right.
on an
Hopefully
annual
you
basis,
won't
which you
wait
do now.
I mean, it's just like when we changed the math program. We
Yes,
had a
like when you
line
put it
item.
in a math
Singapore
program.
math program
Yeah.
adopted, was it
It's
4 or
not
5
an
years ago?
annual.
Right.
And you saw a bump in that year too, and then
Yeah.
it goes away. It's not an annual.
You should have a replacement of curriculum every 5 to 6 years, really, if you've got a cycle going on. Curriculum programs. But it is time for your reading program to be upgraded, and it's so working on selection and
This
looking
year is all focused on updating teachers on, you know, reading, how teaching reading has changed and,
Yeah,
you know,
training.
best practices in teacher reading. And that's a year long, getting everyone on the same page and then looking to adopt next year new materials.
Does that help, Hayes?
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification. I didn't recognize or appreciate that it was a part of a program per se. And I feel like, again, it would be helpful to have these types of non-recurring expenses separated out. And maybe that's just how it looks on there. And I think it's just because of how time passes year to year, board changes over, and having this more easily understood in terms of the line items would be really helpful.
You also had a question around the first grade. You want to speak to that, Elise and Mickey, sort of to help her understand why we went this route?
What was the question? I mean, we really
She
didn't want
wasn't
to.
sure we needed the second why split first grade. So as much as you can say, I mean, there's obviously
We're
maybe
likely
things-
to be at 24.
Well, right now, the numbers are getting up there. I mean, they're currently 23 and probably 24. There are some high needs in that classroom. And so that's a conversation that the administrators at the building level, the teachers are discussing whether they move in that direction. It's not an additional cost of the district, it's a reallocation of positions. So really it's up to the school team. They're monitoring that. They'll look at all the cases and they'll look at, you know, all the grades and where can they best move people around to serve the kids at the best level. Best I can tell you.
So when you say it's a reallocation of personnel, though, I mean, I think that we're talking about a role that we've had as an enrollment, and that's the expectation of the community. And so when will the decision be made? Is this person staying in the budget if we approve it, or if is in terms of
If it isn't used,
deciding on when this person will be
There is a time
under
limit.
contract?
Looking at changing assignments or reallocation of positions, and that deadline is April 15th. So you have to notify people if their current position is not going to be in existence in the following year. And then when you follow that process and you open up a different position, say after April 15th, because of your numbers, you're more solid on what you're going to have, then that position can be the same person, or it can be open up, posted, and you pick the best candidate, which is what you should do, is pick the best candidate. Now, you had high numbers, I believe, in grade 4, so you added a second teacher and you broke out grade 5. But the budget is requesting a 0.4 Spanish teacher so that you could change the model to go in a teaming model of grades 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. And then you don't need to add from year to year another teacher to break out that group. So you're just using your current resources to meet the needs of the kids and trying to stabilize that teaming model, which is really what's most current. So I don't know if that helps answer, but there are time limits on when decisions have to be made. And they are only when you're doing non-renewals. There is no time limit on when you need to add staff. Obviously, you could add staff the night before you open school. But there is a process in a non-renewal if you are not using all the current staff that you have on.
And I will add, when there's a high probability that you're going to need that staff, you build it into the budget. And that's what's being done here, because there is a high probability that first grade.
Nikki, if you speak, the owl will pick up your voice.
I know, she just hit the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I just
Go ahead,
make one
jump in.
comment? Class size isn't the only factor that's used to decide about splitting classes. So oftentimes we talk about special education needs. I just want to remind people that this is some of our youngest people who have not had, because of COVID, did not have any prior academic experience, and particularly social and emotional development. So to have the largest class size for these kids, we're not only looking at special education needs, but all the needs of that class that we are, as we move through the year, realizing just how behind some of those are. And it's very difficult to address it in a large class size. So I just wanted to remind people about who these kids are. And yeah.
When we first got like the breakdown of classes, when we got our first budget run, this wasn't split, but there were a particular number of paras in that class, and I don't have that information in front of me now. If the class is split, will that allow us to reduce the number of paras in that class?
Can I address? Well, what we've done as an administrative team, Hayes, is that we have not targeted a decrease of pairs in any particular class, because it's really about where do you have your greatest need in supporting kids. So what the team recommended is that they could decrease the para population by a 1.0 FTE. And then as it gets closer to registrations and closer to the end of the year, then they can look at the entire pool of paras and reassign them where the greatest needs are. So I don't want to target first grade, whether it's going to have 3 paras down to 2 or any other grade. Because as Mickey said, you got to think about the kids that are going in first grade really did not have a normal year of school last year. So we don't know where the need's going to be. So it's the flexibility to allow the administrators to reassign the group, knowing that we have already decreased the group by 1.0, wherever that comes from. So we didn't really want to target the conversation or even picking an assignment because, I mean, kids' needs are fluid. They might start out the year where they need to put 3 in first grade, but maybe by Christmas, they need to reassign somebody in 4th grade. So they have to have that flexibility to be able to make those assignments. But the point was to make the budget work in decreasing FTEs. And we felt pretty comfortable as a group that we could reduce it by 1. And then allow the team to reassign people where their greatest needs are. So I hope that kind of helps you because it's not a clear answer.
But the para count is down by one.
Correct. The overall count is down by 1 FTE. Yeah.
For people in the public who don't know what FTE is, 1 FTE could be 1 person, 1 FTE
Right.
could be 2 people, 1 FTE could be 3 people. It just depends on how much they're
Right.
working.
It's full-time equivalent.
Yeah.
That's what- So.
All right. Hayes, any other questions?
I'd rather give someone else some airtime at the
All right.
moment.
Okay, thanks, Hayes. Sarah, did you want to speak? No? All
No,
right.
because some of the things that I had a question on have already been asked. So it's all good.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Yola?
So I have one question. I wanted to know and learn about enrichment instruction. And looking at the prior budget, it was budgeted at 3,500. This is in, oh boy. It's in regular instruction. It's on
page
the middle
2,
of the
right?
second page.
Yeah,
page
page
2. So looking at, it was budgeted at 3,500 last year. We only used 119. This year is budgeted at 2,500, and for next year, we're looking at 25,000. So I'm curious to learn about that change. Is
Are you
that
looking at the same one I'm looking at?
It's on page 2.
She is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got it right.
So
32,
something is seriously wrong
5322.
there.
Oh, enrichment and stuff. Yeah, okay.
I saw it.
3,500.
Is that maybe a typo?
Where do you have?
3,500.
But it might be a different run.
The run is January 10th.
Yeah, this was yesterday.
Okay.
So something's very wrong there.
So you're
Oh,
not
good.
instituting a new
Oh, that's
enrichment program.
Yeah,
fantastic.
so
Is that going to impact the bottom line?
Sure thing.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Enrichment instruction is,
Awesome.
that line is what we use for field trips.
Okay.
And that's why there was little or nothing spent last year because there were no field trips.
No, but there's a field trip line also. That's
No,
separate.
that field trip line is for transportation for the busing. This is for
Okay.
entrance fees to get into a museum or something.
Okay.
So that's why, that's why it falls under the enrichment line.
It's probably 3,500, but
Okay.
great. You have
Should be
an eye for detail.
Yeah.
Well, I sat there today, like line by line.
Okay.
hearing them.
Well, that's
And then-
great. That's going to only help our
So that's a
numbers.
good thing.
Thank you, Yola.
But then on the flip side, I found, and I asked Nikki in an email about summer school.
Yeah,
And
extended
that
year.
has not been accounted for, but you mentioned, if you could just, it was overlooked.
Do you want me to explain that?
Could
while
you,
you're going
yeah,
on?
if you guys could explain
Oh.
that, just,
Yeah,
because I read your
Yes,
response,
we
but
had
I
that
think that's an
made up for
important
the-
piece.
we overlooked the extended school year because last year it was paid through a grant.
Right.
Actually, it was
The year
more
before?
that, when we were doing when Janet was doing some of those
The
salary the calculations, it automatically zeroed
Zeroed
out
out.
that line item for
Yep.
ESY. So, and we just overlooked it.
Right, and so we've added it in to
But
balance it.
Yola found it.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
Yola's getting the gold
It
star.
was good because those were good
Yeah.
catches that we needed to have in there.
they do, but that might
So wait,
even
the extended
address.
school year wasn't in there, but
It was
this
at zero.
typo may cover.
You'll
what
see that
should
it
be
was
extended
zero.
school year.
Zero, yeah.
The
But we,
exception,
Mickey recommended taking $15,000 out of a residential tuition cost and then using $15,000 from the, is it ARP?
Right,
ARP,
but the
IDEA
89
grant.
residential we should put back.
Yeah.
Because we've got 20 something
just use
that's
the
in here.
15. Yeah.
So this isn't eligible for a grant like it was last
If we
year
use
because of
15 as a
COVID?
grant and 15 back, then we don't have to pull it out of the residential.
There's no.
yeah.
There's no
what you're
more
saying.
grant funding.
There's no additional compensatory education grant funding for special education. There is a $15,000 grant. That's for this year, that it's a 2-year grant, so you could choose to use that 15,000 for ESY.
But have we applied? We haven't applied for that grant yet, but we will. We already have it.
It's for this year, we haven't assigned it to anything yet.
But we have it in.
It's
So I feel
in
like
the
it's
kids'
supposed to be somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's a 24-month grant, so
Oh.
you just need to decide how.
That's
to
what I'm
use
worried
that.
about.
Yeah,
Well, we gotta look, we gotta.
well,
get
let's
that
not
right
jump
before
into
tomorrow.
Oh, I know why. Oh. So I got it. I know exactly what it is. It's not a mistake.
No.
Oh, now I'm gonna cry because that was really a great thing. So what it is under enrichment, I put the substitute, or not substitute, but the subcontractor for bands. And the total was 125,187.
oh, okay.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yep,
Yeah.
I knew that.
That's all right, at least we found it.
number was
That's
like
all.
really
It's always
familiar.
good.
That's what's
Yeah.
important.
Oh, well.
Really.
So I'm
Oh,
sorry.
well, it was a great find anyway.
It's all right, it's good to.
Well, it makes me feel better. I thought I was losing it. But it's
Nope,
totally
good.
possible.
Well, we have addressed the summer program.
Yes.
Right.
Did you have other questions?
No, I think that's it right now.
Let's see, I've done Jen, I've done Hayes, I've done Sarah. Vince?
Yeah, don't forget me.
No, I still, did I do Phil?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well,
Phil-
Vince,
Phil
you
was
know, I
first.
think.
Around a second time.
I saved the best for last. And then-
Oh gosh, and so now that's me stands between the board meeting and being able to go home tonight. I see. So Elizabeth, I guess I really only have two concerns, and I'm trying to, and I can't really figure it out because I don't feel like they've been answered with your kind emails, but you do put a lot in writing, which is extremely helpful to get us to understand, right? So my overall concern is that the budget grew. And you can say, listen, it only grew 3%, but the point is when I look at what we really did is we're pulling money out of the high school trust, which is, arguably high, we can say what we want, but if you sort of think about that back in the budget grew 5%, right? And then, and I, that's the number I see. I think that number is high for us. I wish it wasn't. And I've asked in the past, what can we do? Like what, right? Like, because the answer always is, well, we'd have to make a significant cut somewhere if we wanted to keep a 5% budget flat, right? And that is, right, if I talk, to the people around town, like that is, the budget is a significant concern, right? The taxes are constantly going up, and this is 75% of the taxes. So we have that fiduciary duty to ask that question, but the question's never been answered. Where are those cuts? Now, I'll tie that right into my sort of second question about that, which is the FTE count, which we asked about a few weeks ago, a few months ago, perhaps already. So what's the FTE count in the Lyme School, knowing that the student population, the student body hasn't grown? And in the last 7-8 years, we've gone roughly from 40 FTE to 50 FTE, but we don't really know where that went. And I remember in prior years, we used to talk about, okay, we need a person here, we need a person for that, but that's only this year, next year that person won't be there. But the FTE always grew, right? We never take anything away. And what I'm trying to get to, sort of reconcile, is we never answered that question. Maybe it's really hard to answer, maybe nobody wants to answer it. But do we have a plan? Like, do we have a plan to through natural attrition, are we going to get back down to that FTE count? Because that's where our money goes, right? How can we see a budget shrink or stay level in the years to come if we were to go ahead with the budget that we have in front of us today?
I can say our class sizes are not going down. The numbers of kids in each grade right now, don't see them going down.
I'm not sure if I caught that, because our enrollment has teeter-tottered around 190 to 200 for the last 10 years. Like this, you can't, I don't see how class, I mean, I guess like.
Yeah, somebody's got the. Vince, I would have to go look at FTE counts year over year, which I haven't done.
I did that
Oh, you did that?
Yeah, there was.
And I added the students on the right-hand side.
Enrollment.
What was it and how much has it drifted?
So it's gone up about 10,
It's gone up
10
about 10
people in
people.
10 years.
So
And the student count has remained pretty much
we
level.
have added some positions. You know, we did put in design lab. We did put in differentiation. We did put in language. You know, we made some curriculum choices that added staffing that were different, you know, beyond the classroom. I would argue that some of the other of that 10 count will fall under the need. Some of it's going to be sped driven too. You know, when I looked at our sped count, I haven't seen that go down.
It's been actually pretty stable to spend.
You know, and so those numbers are gonna stay up there if they aren't going down. The supports. So, you know,
We're adding a 0.6 superintendent. in the
and then
budget.
we now are adding in some admin. So, you know, I don't think the numbers are exorbitant, given sort of some of the curriculum direction we've gone. The sped numbers, the class sizes, and, you know, the admin. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I don't know if we can deliver the education that we are asked to deliver and meet our strategic plan goals by taking out positions, because, you know, we would be taking things out like design lab. And I don't think we would want to be taking that out of the curriculum. I don't think we want to be taking language out of the curriculum. You know, I will certainly say that, you know, language was a really challenging one that we built into the system. And we did get some grant funding in the beginning to look at that and so we could understand it better from a developmental standpoint. And it was pretty clear that this was something that everybody felt was important to have there, and eventually got built into the budget. But that's what we would fundamentally have to do, is debate over what the deliverables are that we want for the academic experience of our kids.
But when can we have that debate though? Because I feel like, you know, this is my third year on the board, and it's, you know, the question, I mean, this is what I hear. People always ask, why does the budget go up? People never ask me, why aren't we adding more programs to the school? I'm not arguing we eliminate something, but, you know, that question of looking at, is this reasonable? Is this growth in additional FTEs or programs? Is it reasonable? Or is it, you know, is it delivering additional value for the students that we can measure somehow? That, you know, where would we reduce, right? That discussion's never had on the school board level, and I ask why.
I mean, I suspect that the programs are adding value. I think that my take on this is that it's very expensive to run a district of one school. We're missing significant opportunities to share costs. A district of one school is unusual for New Hampshire, and it's, I think, unusual for the country. We're losing opportunity to share administrative costs. We're losing opportunity potentially to share tech coordination costs and tech direction costs. We're losing opportunity to share the cost of a facilities director who can manage multiple buildings and then have staff inside those buildings. And that's where I think like the costs, those are institutional costs. If the community wants the Lyme School to remain a district of one, these costs aren't going to go down, I don't think. And I wouldn't want to take programming away. You know, I wouldn't want to start cutting language, you know, in order to stay a district of one, I guess. That's just, I mean, and I could maybe be missing some really key pieces of information that would change my mind, but that's just my sense today.
And that's, you know, to be honest, Jen, that's probably a closer answer to what I am looking for than Elizabeth, you know, with all due respect, right? Like it's, you know, a good understanding of where costs come and why budgets grow, right? Budgets never grow with one big fat item. They always grow through a little bit here, a little bit there, right? Like we just looked at the tech budget. We can do the exact same breakdown of every other little bit of the budget that we want to try to find out where that money is growing. But it's growing every year, and it's growing faster than inflation on average every year. And this year we're just right about at inflation rate, right? So that's, you know, I think that's a, you know, that's a sign. You know, that's really, yeah, go ahead.
That's really, yeah, that's
I just wanted to comment on,
but you're right, fundamentally, we're gonna be a single district.
looking at the programs and the differentiation. I think we did an exercise where we looked very closely at FTEs. Right now, we're working off the current strategic plan. So I think that, you know, you're asking, when are we going to talk about this thing? I think that's a long-term strategic plan. And as we go into that, then that might be a key factor in the strategic plan. But working on the current strategic plan where we are looking at differentiation, high quality, low class sizes, all of the things that's in the current strategic plan, that's what we're addressing. I did want to also just speak to special education at the elementary school level. I think we've stayed pretty level, and that's a little bit more of a controllable cost. At the high school level, that's where you see the big jump this year in the budget, and it has to do with high school special education tuition and the cost that high schools are increasing their tuition costs for special education services. We are providing more contracted services. We are doing more evaluations at the high school level for anxiety and things that may be related to COVID. I don't want to say everything's related to COVID, but it's very likely related when we see these kinds of additional, years ago, we would see high special ed needs at the elementary school level, and then we would provide excellent services, and we would see a drop in numbers at the high school level. Now we are seeing the opposite, where we are getting new referrals at the high school level. Some of those costs are less controllable because they're based on what our high schools charge us.
No, and I understand. I mean, Mickey, that's, you know, that is very fair, and it is at the very least frustrating that there's no sort of federal government, right? Like the situation puts this back right on top of us school districts, forcing us as small towns to have these extremely hard discussions. without sort of a way out, look, this is really, I think you're probably right. We probably should look at a strategic plan, even if it's simply to calibrate and say to ourselves, yes, we are doing the right thing for the town of Lyme. It's never the right time to do that. I understand that. I would ask, specifically that we do think about that.
Don't we go into that next year? Next year,
Yes.
if we do go into that, that's when we start to cycle for the next strategic plan. So, you're ahead of us. Because
always thinking ahead. That's
always thinking ahead. But it is good planning. But no, honestly, in seriousness, that this would be the place to have this bigger question conversation that you bring up, because it allows us to explore a lot of different things. We could address, should we continue to be a district of one or not? All of that can be built into the work that goes into the next strategic plan. And
yeah,
really,
or exactly what like Jen is suggesting, right? Like, is there economies of scale we can gain while still, right? Because the question there is, do we as a town want to lose control over the policies and the quality of education, which probably we also don't want, right? And so the thing is that I feel like, so we agree as a group that this is going to be on our docket.
this is a next year topic, because we have to start to put that all together, because that we are at the end of this cycle.
So that's a timing question. So like one of the things I know we have talked about is, because I think a lot of us are like, we don't want to get rid of like Spanish or whatever, you don't want to get rid of the things that are in the strategic plan. So if we start evaluating, like, are we able to share services with the school district? That work needs to happen now, doesn't it? Like the spring? Or like, when do you have to have it all in place for the next cycle?
I think like, as we look forward to hiring a superintendent, that would potentially be one of our goals, if we could find somebody who maybe has experience either in New Hampshire or potentially Vermont, in terms of figuring out like, well, what are the services that can be shared and how do we do that? Now, I would point to Plainfield and Cornish just as an example. Those districts have maintained themselves as independent districts. And in 2016, there was significant talk about really merging those schools, where Plainfield would maintain the elementary, K through whatever, and Cornish would host the middle school. And neither town wanted to do that. So they kept their district, their K through 8 schools, and they found a variety of ways to share costs. And that has brought their cost per pupil down. I will say Cornish's cost per pupil looks very high. It's because they have 90 kids in that school. And they're still choosing to run it as a K through 8. So that's a choice that like they've made. So you have to be careful and look at the denominator. Plainfield's denominator looks like ours. They're 200, actually maybe 10 more. It depends on the year. But there are about 200 kids in a K through 8 school, largely with one grade per.
Right, just because it's 5 after 9, and it's an important conversation. I'm not trying to diminish it. It is something we should put on the agenda, and I don't think it's out of the gate right now, but it is a next year item, and we should start thinking about that process and how to do it. I'm trying to button down the budget because we're going to the budget committee tomorrow night. So I would like to know if we can go forward with this budget or not. Because yes, Bree?
Can I just bring up the warrant article on facilities?
Yes,
Or
I
does
was
it have a
trying
place?
to get the budget
Okay,
cleared, and
I
then
thought
we
it was
go to
part of
the-
it.
Yes.
Sorry, I want to rush you.
No, because it's its own item, so I have
Okay.
to get, because
Understand.
that it's a separate warrant, the
Okay.
budget's its own warrant. So,
Okay. Sorry.
So I would like to get the sense of the board that this is a budget that we can go forward with. It is warrant article number 1.
I have a question. And you'll have to, I don't know if we've met and discussed the budget since you all last met with the town budget committee. And
where were we with an increase at that point, and what were their sort of homework and recommendations?
Very happy with the budget. They didn't ask us to change it. And we were at 3.1. And we're at 3.26 now. And we did say at the time that we'd probably come in with a slight adjustment due to the fact that we hadn't dealt with the administrative structure, and that is really the material piece of the increase from 0.1 to 0.26. So I feel very comfortable bringing this to the budget committee.
So do I have a motion to present this proposed budget to the budget committee?
Second.
Moved by Glenn, second by Marta. Any further discussion?
So we're voting to present the current budget to the budget committee, recognizing it can still change.
Yeah, but not really for much longer. You know, if they came out of it yesterday, we have one more opportunity next week.
Well, next week, and we won't meet next week.
We aren't planning to, but if we have an issue tomorrow night, you will be.
I know we really want all our
So-
paperwork done by the 25th.
Yeah, the 25th, everything has to be done. So can we call the vote?
Sure. All in favor of the budget as proposed?
We have to see what Vince is doing.
To Vince?
So Vince, is your hand up or not?
Vince is hiding.
Vince is still thinking. I'd hoped we had kept it smaller, but I will support you bringing this budget to the budget committee under the understanding we're going to have a strategic discussion in the following months.
And Paige, were you an aye also? Okay,
All right.
so motion passes unanimously.
All right, so the last item is the warrant article for buildings and grounds. The Doug and Green have been working on the 5-year plan for this. We have a number of items that were deferred. This is a warrant article for $70,000, though I want to put in that, you know, one of the items is the gym floor, which has been confirmed needs to be done. That over the coming months, we actually may get some support from the rec department towards the cost of this floor. If that's the case, we can, from the floor, reduce the amount of the warrant article, but we wouldn't want to go in and put a lower number because we haven't even had a formal conversation with the rec committee, but it's always nice to be able to bring a number down and bring it up. But
Would they basically 50% it? Is that what
They
you're
might,
saying?
yeah, yeah.
No,
and it-
there hasn't
well,
been.
There hasn't been any kind of conversation.
I just threw that up there.
Yeah. It could be, that's one option.
No, they were approached with the idea as well as the question about the need to do the floor. And there's an openness to having a conversation about it.
And so we should do that, that's behooves us. But right now, that 70,000 represents work, deferred maintenance, which was like there's a door glass that has to be replaced at the front door, the gym floor, some safety compliance stuff, and then leftover work from the water pipe break, correct?
Well, that's the classroom in question. It was renovating 4 classrooms.
4 classrooms, the
And
entrance
the
class, the
hallway.
hallway work on the second floor,
Yeah.
and the gym. Most of these items are one-time costs or cycled costs. Like Corinne's going to show sort of the 5-year plan with the cycle cost for doing classrooms over time. And what we would be doing going forward is it wouldn't be a 70,000 warrant item. We would be putting in incremental amounts as a trust add line that then would be cycled out as the work was done. So you created a smoothness, much like a capital reserve, like a machine capital reserve fund. But in this first year, this would be a way to get this going and deal with some deferred activity that needs attention. So that is that warrant item. So I open that up for questions and conversation.
We need a motion for those two.
I will move that to get it on the table.
Does the motion create that reserve fund? Or are
No,
you putting
it's
it
in place. It
existing?
exists already.
Okay,
in the
sorry, because
existing.
I was like, oh, we need to have
No,
that.
the warrant article is around the buildings and ground deferred maintenance work.
So the motion is to move the warrant article for $70,000.
Second.
Seconded by Barbara.
And then
Any further discussion, questions?
That I don't think was listed in the public documents.
So I don't know that you guys have a copy of the warrant. Is that true?
you
Because
sent it
I didn't.
around.
Did I send it around?
I
to the
don't
whole
see it
board?
in the
I don't think I
documents.
did.
Oh, I thought
I
I did.
didn't.
Remember I
Yeah.
asked that for you
Yeah,
earlier
I didn't
and
put it in
you
there.
said, oh no, she sent it around.
thought so.
No.
Well,
I did,
definitely have
and I
your
sent it to the
description,
finance
Elizabeth.
committee, but I
You have
didn't
my
send it.
My
But
apologies.
not
I
the
didn't put
wording
it
of the
into
warrant
the-
article. So
Alright,
don't we actually need that? to
They
vote on
need
it?
that. All right, can we, if I can find it, can we print it out? Because we need it for tomorrow night.
Oh, I'll send it to Dina, like all
Oh, yeah,
that,
we'll be
all
fine
that
with
goes
that.
to Dina in the morning.
I
So-
know,
Don't
but they
they
need
need
the
the
language
We
to
want some
vote
paper
on.
copies of the warrant articles.
Well,
Can you
maybe,
Can you read it out?
yes,
Just
hang
read
on,
it
let
out
me-
loud.
let me go find it. I thought they all had it. Sorry about that. That's my miss.
Okay,
Oh, I
there
probably
is
have
an
it.
email on Friday, December 31st.
I have it. Right
Is it
here.
in
You
there?
do?
It's
Oh,
on
okay.
paper.
Oh, God. All right.
Yeah,
She sent it along with.
we need to make a copy of that tomorrow.
No, Dina takes care
All
of it.
right.
Or she'll make a
So,
copy.
Yeah, I
so
send it
the
all to her
article
electronically,
is-
and she manages all of that for me.
It's Article 3, because technically the budget is Article 2, because the first article is to hear the reports.
I'm looking at an email from December 31st that Janet sent,
That's the warrant article.
and it's, okay.
So it's called Building and Maintenance Project. To see if the Lyme School District will vote to raise and appropriate the school board's recommended amount of $70,000 for the purpose of building renovations beyond the annual building and grounds expenditures. Projects may include the renovation of 4 classrooms and the sanding and refinishing of the gym floor.
Why do we say May?
Because
you might change your project.
if something, like if the boiler blew up and we couldn't, it's that kind of thing. But the intent is these items. Sorry.
So any further discussion? All in
Yeah,
favor?
I have one quick question. I think I asked this already. Please tell me if you answered this already. When we had COVID, we did the gym floor. And we spent money on that. What, did that never happen? Did it happen? Was it done wrong? Like, why do we need to spend more money on the gym floor now?
I think it did happen, and I think that it was just resurfaced, and resurfacing cost anywhere between, I think, $6,000 and $8,000. You guys correct me if you think I'm wrong. But at this point, we can't identify the last time that the gym floor was sanded down to the bare floor and refinished building it up. And that has to happen every few years. I don't know what the actual timeline is, but I can tell you that we haven't been able to find any paperwork that determines the last time that was done. When those things happen, when that big project happens, it's more like $19,000 to $20,000 project.
And it has been quite a while, and I think there is a reasoning for that in terms of the longevity and the integrity of the gym floor over time. That you actually do this sanding and bring it down and bring it build it, because you keep building up with the finish, and you've got to take all that off and sort of start fresh, or it starts to.
Lisa Dameron just chatted, and she's the physical
Yeah.
education instructor. She says it's been over 20 years.
Yeah,
Over
that's
20
what I
years.
thought. I
Well, you
couldn't
know
find
how people
anything.
complain about
Yeah.
our gym,
They
right?
do.
Yeah, our gym Upper Valley.
Yeah,
It's
they think
like-
they're better.
So
I could've
it is, we did look extensively at that, and it did turn out that we felt that it was due.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Elizabeth. I was just wondering, what did we do with COVID? Like, what was that? Because I think we spent 15 grand on a gym floor then as well. Maybe gym floors just need 15 grand a year and that's what they require. I don't know. I don't know nothing about gyms. I don't.
It's probably 15 grand every.
But wait, you said
Few
we
years.
resurfaced it last year?
No, we did not.
No, that's
We
probably
redid
just
it.
like buffing it and putting a new layer of urethane on it.
Because I thought resurfacing was more expensive, like you fix the boards that
They'll
start.
go
nibbling off.
right
what they're-
down and they'll level it out and then they then
Yeah,
they-
so
Lisa's
I
thinking.
probably use that terminology because it was really just, I think, taking the top layer off and then.
Yeah,
this
probably
thing,
take
I
this
said,
sand
top
all the way
layer off.
down,
They
brings
just
it
like
down
buff
and
it
puts
so
it,
that the
it
new
dresses the
urethane can
lining.
actually dry.
Doug
It's not-
refers to it as finishing.
Okay.
Yeah, they put a sealant coat on it, sealant coat on it. It's a floor finish.
Yeah, it needs to be.
It needs to
taken
be
down.
now sanded down.
All right, so all in favor?
Oh, okay. Sorry, for the warrant article. that was
All
read out loud.
right. Hayes and
Hayes,
Vince.
you're up.
Yeah, they did
Okay,
thumbs up too.
motion
All right,
passes.
and that's it.
So that's it.
So when we present this warrant article, can we please say this was done 20 years ago?
Yes.
It's supposed to
Well, now
happen.
that
every
Lisa
year.
told me it
Now
was
that we
20,
know
we
that.
were trying to get the date. We couldn't get a date.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hayes and Vince, I'm gonna ask you guys to stay on because we do have one quick thing in non-public.
The records are. in
Can I
camera.
just ask a clarifying question of,
Yeah.
not about the budget, but just about the process for the posting of the technology position that we're not posting right now? Is that true? We're waiting for confirmation of funding?
Well,
Waiting for
discussion will go to the
25th.
next board
And
meeting.
we'll have it up.
By then, we'll know whether we've got funding
Okay.
to apply for, because you can't spend it until, but if you know that there's funding left in ESSER 3 or the other grant, then you can at least post it. But
If we realize that the amount of this now, because it's now just a fraction of the school year.
Correct.
Okay.
I
My
was
next
gonna ask
question is,
for a
if we-
retro.
Yeah.
If we advertise an interview for this position, does that to fill it for next year too? Like, fill it for the rest of this year, or no, we have to
again,
advertise
that's
again?
another discussion the board has to have. Are you looking to fill that position till June and then post? I mean, maybe it's a contracted service starting July 1, maybe it's not. I don't know an answer.
I thought we talked about not doing contract service. for that.
It's in the
I
budget.
don't
of an
know.
FTE, right?
That's why it needs to go on
So
the
that-
agenda, because I don't know where it was
Yes,
last.
but
Different people
yeah,
have
so
different
it
things.
depends on how you look at it, because
Yeah.
the position doesn't exist.
But in our budget for next year,
You put in a
We
specific
put a
amount of money.
monetary amount
we
for it.
put in a money. Okay. Did you count it in the FTE count?
Yes,
All right. it's in
but
the
it's
FTE
still,
count. No, but that's good to know. It just.
I
gives
just
us
wanted to
more
know if we're
flexibility.
interviewing twice or just.
Who
in terms
knows?
of
Depends what
timing.
direction the board wants to go in or how that's gonna play out.
All
I
right,
don't think we know that.
so with that, can we close our public meeting?
Motion. Can I make a motion?
Yeah,
Can I make a
motion to
I'll second.
exit into, okay, so Boylston and Glenshaw to exit into non-public.
So are you going to stop the recording at 9:21? So we exit in a non-public, and are we, the only reason we're coming back to public is to close the meeting, correct?